Hey guys, this is Tabi Asobi, and today, well, are you wondering how weapon augments work in Master Rank for Monster Hunter World Iceborne? If you are, here's a quick Weapon Augmenting 101 guide to teach you the basics of how weapon upgrading now works in the Iceborne expansion. First off, you're essentially able to really start augmenting your Master Rank weapons once you finish the game's main campaign. That's because augmenting requires gathered items and monster drops from the Guiding Lands, which isn't unlocked until you beat Iceborne's last boss. Before we get to the basics of augmenting weapons, however, let's address one common question often raised by players. What's going to happen to my high-rank weapon augments? So basically, upgrading high-rank weapons still works the same way that it used to. That means using specific streamstones that are tailored to each weapon. Once you upgrade a weapon to its master rank counterpart, however, all those augments get wiped out. The good news is that you get back all the mats that you use for the augment. Master rank upgrades, however, use a different method, as well as different materials, so you can't use those same mats anymore. Overall though, I think the changes in master rank augments are a plus. That's because you no longer have to play the grindy world slot machine for weapon-based streamstones. As such, you don't have to worry about being a gunner who keeps getting axe streamstones, for example, and vice versa. At the same time, you'll still need to grind for different materials, which can end up taking a lot of time. Augmenting is targeted as an endgame activity for sure. In fact, the reason this is a Augmenting 101 basic guide and not an advanced augmenting guide is because I don't nearly have enough materials to upgrade weapons for multiple cycles. And that's after playing Guiding Lands a lot. To summarize, here are the key points for weapon upgrading straight from the Hunter notes. Number 1. Rarity 10 or higher weapons that have been upgraded to the maximum level on the weapon tree, or Rarity 8 or lower weapons that have been previously augmented can now be powered up through customized augmentation. Number 2. Iceborne adds a new augment category for increasing elemental and status damage. Number 3. The number of augment slots changes depending on weapon rarity. You can also upgrade a weapon to increase its number of slots. With all that out of the way, let's take a look at the two methods for upgrading master rank weapons. First is slot-based augments. This is the normal augmenting method for Iceborne and requires you to use a weapon's built-in slots in order to perform upgrades. Instead of using streamstones, you now use materials that you acquire from monsters and gathering spots, typically from the Guiding Lands like I previously mentioned. This method lets you do 7 types of augments, each requiring a certain number of slots to activate. First off are extra slots. As its name implies, this allows you to increase the number of augment slots in a weapon, not to be confused with jewel slots. The first time you use this upgrade, for example, you will get an additional 2 augment slots on your weapon. Up next is Attack Increase. This augment initially requires 3 weapon slots and boosts a weapon's raw damage. The first upgrade adds 16 points of base raw to the weapon. Using the Anjanath Lohinspire Insect Glaive as an example, the weapon's attack was boosted from 837 to 853 after the first upgrade, an increase of about 2% in base raw. The Kadachi Viper Tail 2, meanwhile, was boosted from 775 to 791, once again a 16-point increase. Next up is Affinity Increase. This initially requires 2 weapon slots and raises the chances of inflicting a critical strike. The first upgrade increases a weapon's affinity by 10%. After that is Defense Increase. This augment initially requires 1 weapon slot and grants plus 15 defense after the first upgrade. Up next is Slot Upgrade, not to be confused with extra slots. This augment initially requires 3 weapon slots. It actually adds an additional slot to your weapon for inserting jewels or decorations. The first upgrade adds a level 1 slot. Up next is one of my favorites, Health Regen. Health Regen plus Greatsword, my gosh, that's one of the most fun things I've ever done in Monster Hunter. Anyway, this augment initially requires 3 weapon slots. It basically lets a hunter recover a portion of his or her health when damaging an enemy. Like I said, it's really good with weapons like Greatsword, so it's something I'm really looking forward to dabbling in again. Next category is new to Iceborne, that would be Elemental or Status Effect Up. This initially requires 1 weapon slot and boosts elemental or status damage depending on the weapon. The first upgrade provides a boost to your base elemental or status value of 30 points. The Lohinspire Glaive, for example, saw its fire element go up from 450 to 480. The Kadachi Viper Tail 2, meanwhile, also saw a 30-point increase to its paralysis value from 240 to 270. You can also evolve upgrade categories by continuing to upgrade a weapon. Augmenting the Viper Tail 2, for example, for a second time, adds an additional 30-point increase in paralysis attack on top of the initial 30 points from the first upgrade. Do note that additional upgrades require more slots. Using a Chrome Drill 3 as an example, the first elemental status upgrade required just 1 augment slot, while the second required an additional 2 augment slots for a grand total of 3 augment slots. Just like the previous augment system, you will have to decide whether it's better to focus on one type of augment, such as multiple levels of health regen for example, or combine multiple augments such as affinity plus attack. On the plus side, you can also roll back or remove upgrades in case you made a mistake or simply change your mind. Up next is augmenting via custom upgrades. This second type of upgrade ignores the slot requirement, allowing you to add all sorts of augments for your weapon. The catch is that it only adds incremental boosts, so you'll need to do it multiple times to make a noticeable difference. It also requires a lot of mats, which means you will need to do a lot of farming for monsters and materials, particularly in the Guiding Lands. Custom upgrades start with a few choices, and more are unlocked as you upgrade a weapon. Here's an example using the Chrome Drill 3. First is the Pukka Pukka Mod, which slightly increases affinity. On the Chrome Drill 3, upgrading the weapon once raises its affinity from 0% to 1%. Second one is the Pukka Pukka Mod. This one slightly increases elemental or abnormal status damage. Using the same drill, upgrading the weapon once raised status damage by 10 points from 420 to 430. Then we have the Barith Mod, which slightly increases attack. Using the Chrome Drill 3 once again, base raw attack was raised by 2 points from 598 to 600. So after using the Pukka Pukka mod on the weapon, the following options were unlocked. First was the Dodogama mod, which works just like the Barith mod. That means it adds 2 points of base raw attack to the weapon. Also added is the Nightshade Paolumu mod. This one works just like the Pukka Pukka mod and adds 1% affinity to the weapon. The Coral Pukka Pukka mod, meanwhile, works just like the Pukka Pukka mod. That means it adds 10 points of elemental or status damage to a weapon. New to the mix is the Hornitor mod. This one adds plus 10 defense to your weapon. Just like slot-based augmenting, you also have the ability to remove a custom upgrade that you've done if you made a mistake or change your mind. This also lets you get back the materials that you used. Also note that not all weapons support custom upgrades. Anyway, there you go, the basics for augmenting Master Rank weapons in Monster Hunter World. If you found this guide useful, make sure to check back as we have a lot more guides planned for Iceborne. As always, if you have any thoughts or questions, please feel free to leave them in the comment section. Once again, this is Tabi Asobi, and thank you for watching.